All right, today's video is exactly 2 weeks of owning the Dyno Nuggie. I've already put 1,100 miles on it. I've already off-roaded it, done a lot of stuff with it so far, and it's been a ton of fun. So let's talk through it. So if you guys have seen my most recent videos, I'll put pop-ups here. I went off-roading here in Colorado. Didn't get a ton of air. We got to stretch out the suspension a little bit. It was super compliant, and I thought it did awesome. I was really shocked with these live valve shocks, how compliant it is. And a lot of my buddies who have either Gen 1s or have had Gen 1s always ask me, like, hey, now that you've taken it off-road, would love to hear your initial thoughts and impressions. And a couple things come to mind immediately. The weight, the size, the power, and the live valve shocks are by far the biggest things that I noticed. When I was in off-road mode, which engages four-wheel drive, I was able to get sideways with very minimal effort. So that means two things to me. One is, because this truck is all those things that I mentioned, it's way more playful and it's way more nimble. The other thing that I don't know enough of, and I would love to hear from one of you guys, is that right there, is the Watts link. I wonder, with having suspension like this in the rear, it allows for the back to kick out a little bit more and have a little bit more agility. But it did unbelievably well. Unbelievably well. The other thing I will say, I haven't spent enough time with these KO3s, but I was out there with 40 PSI and it didn't feel jerky, it didn't feel bouncy. It felt really good. I've had a challenge with some other tires in the past of when I'm off-roading, and I sort of, fortunately or unfortunately, drive it like a sports car, if you will, going sideways, heavy on the brakes. I've had some punctures on the sidewall, but these worked great even at higher PSI than I normally would run. I'm really impressed by the braking of this truck too. I know for the Gen 2 Raptor, right when I got it, one of the first things I wanted to do was upgrade the brakes, because it had a really big nosedive. Whenever you braked hard in the Gen 2, the front end would just go all the way down. So what I did was I did perch collars to stiffen up in the front. And then one of the first times I ever drove the truck hard, my Gen 1 hard, there was brake fade. There was a point going down the mountain that I couldn't stop anymore. So not only did I did mid perch on the Gen 1, but I upgraded the rotors and I upgraded the pads to eliminate that. And that is something that I haven't experienced here. I haven't had any problem whatsoever with the braking on this truck. Mind you, it's only been 1,100 miles, but I am thoroughly impressed thus far with the braking of this truck out of the box. The other thing that has been really positive, that makes me happy as a father, I have two little girls, 4 and 2.5, but this is plenty of room. I think one of the biggest concerns I had switching from a Gen 1 Raptor, or just an F-150 Raptor in general, to the Ranger Raptor platform was, hey, is it going to be a little too small? And it's really not. It's actually perfect. If you have more than 2 adults, I can see it being potentially uncomfortable. But I have a buddy who's 6'3", and he sits back here perfectly fine. I'm closer to like 5'11", so it's really not that big of a deal. But there's plenty of room back here. So that was one of the concerns that I had. As you can see, plenty of room, and the seat is fully back. This isn't even driving position. This is the truck's off and slid all the way back for you to get out of the truck. But there's plenty of room in here. That was a big concern that I had. So now I want to cover, I've done 1,100 miles in this truck. I did that initial 500-mile road trip when I picked up the truck. I've done, daily driving. I've gone to work, I've gone places with the family. I did about 60 miles off-road to break in the truck. It's funny, if you guys haven't seen that video, my intention, according to Ford, the break-in period for this truck is 1,000 miles. So I said, how cool would that be if as soon as it ticks over 1,000 miles, the tires are on dirt and we're ready to go. I got really busy. I wasn't able to drive the exact mileage to make that happen. I actually got to dirt at 950 miles, 940 miles. And right when we were leaving, I hit 1,000 miles. So the last 50 miles of this truck, of the break-in, if you will, has been quote unquote hard miles. I didn't go flat out. I've never been there before. Me and my buddy, neither of us have ever been there before, so we wanted to sort of scout it out and make sure that, we're doing things respectfully and not going on private property and all of that. So I didn't go crazy by any means, but I did test out sport mode, not only on dirt for the initial like 10 or so miles, but off-road mode. And something that I think is really cool in this truck is all the different customization that you can do from a settings perspective. So for instance, when you get to off-road mode, it automatically engages the rear locker. Now, I don't always want the rear locker on when I'm off-roading, and so I was able to turn off the rear locker. The other thing that I learned off-roading was you still have all these sensors. Like if you look at the front bumper, rear bumper, I mean, there's sensors everywhere on this car. And I'm sure that's similar to most modern cars. But what's really cool is that you can turn off the sensors. You can turn off all the parking sensors, because there was one point where we were going over a cattle guard. My buddy's Gen 3 was beeping and hitting the brakes because the sensors are going off. And I was able to turn mine off. I think you can do that in the Gen 3 too. I think he was able to turn his off, but I like that you're able to do that, right? I like that whenever I get into the truck and it's warmed up, I can double click R, automatically puts all the settings that I want the way I want. So I turn off auto stop start. I don't like auto stop start. I turn off lane assistance. I don't like lane assistance. I put the exhaust in Baja mode. I put the suspension in normal, and I have the steering, excuse me, the steering in comfort. So I like that, right? I press this button twice, and it's good to go. Some of the things, and I talked about this in my 1 week review, is my wife drives, she's only driven it a couple times, right? I've only had it 2 weeks, but I'm shocked for $55,000 for being 10 years newer than a Gen 1 Raptor that your seat memory doesn't remember the mirrors. So whenever my wife gets in, she puts the seat to where she wants, she has to adjust the mirrors, and then whenever I get in, it goes to my seat position, I gotta adjust the mirrors again. It's not that big of a deal, but because the Gen 1 Raptor had it, I'm shocked this doesn't have it. The other thing that I've experienced since then is the performance. I maybe went over 3,000 RPM, like not over 4. I barely went over 3,000 RPM the first 1,000 miles. And now that it's over 1,000 miles and off-roading, I was, you know, I was hitting the limiter, right? I was hitting 6,000 RPM. I tried Baja mode a little bit. It wasn't high speed enough to do Baja. It just holds the RPM like at, you know, 4,000 to 6,000 RPM the whole time. So I did off-road mode in sport. But I've read comments of people like, oh, this truck isn't as fast as I thought. My assumption is that they're either coming from a Gen 2 or a Gen 3 Raptor, or they're coming from a car. And if you look at some of the Ford Performance Engineering videos that have come out with some of the bigger folks on YouTube, they talk about this. They built this car and they developed this car to be more playful, more nimble, and more of a sports car feel than the F-150 Raptor. Now, having said all that, I've floored it, right? I've floored it. This truck has way more performance and speed than a Gen 1 Raptor. That is clear as day. Is it quicker than a Gen 2? Is it quicker than a Gen 3? Maybe just as quick as a Gen 2, definitely not as quick as a Gen 3. But if you're buying this truck just from like how fast it goes 0 to 60, this is probably not the truck for you. Now, I don't know other performance variants that are faster in the mid-size truck, but like the one that screams out to me is the Raptor R and the TRX, right? Both have 700 plus horsepower, both 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds. Like, if you want just pure performance in a truck that can off-road as well, I don't think there's any better vehicle out there than the Raptor R and the TRX. But this performance and speed is exactly what I'm looking for, because when I'm using the speed, it's typically to overtake a car, or, you know, just to have a little bit fun, and this is more than sufficient. The other point I wanted to share, and it's going to be really hard to see this in video, but I'll try it, is I just went to sport mode, okay? It downshifted. I'm cruising at 45 miles an hour. I'm going to get gas. I'm cruising. There's a little bit of traffic. So in normal mode, it was in 10th gear. Right now, it's in 7th gear. It holds the gears, which is cool. I like it. But the thing I don't like about it is you can feel the gear shifts. The gear shifts are pretty harsh. When I had my Gen 2 Raptor, I got the Cobb Axis Sport, the tuning from Cobb, that had a transmission tuning as well. And that was a game changer for that truck. I have the same feeling in sport mode specifically than I did with my Gen 2 Raptor. Is this probably needs an aftermarket company to play around with the tuning of the shifts. So much so that actually I had my settings, my R mode, to have sport engine throttle response and sport transmission, but because you can't individually change the transmission back to normal, if you will, I stopped it. I left the transmission and I left the motor to normal, and then I already explained what I had from the R modes. So that is the one thing for me so far, is that the shifts are pretty harsh in sport mode. But I got clear path in front of me. Let's go Baja exhaust. And let's give it some goose and see how it is. I mean, that was probably, and see, it's holding the RPM. Listen. It's just holding fourth gear, which is fine. Like, I like that. But the shifts for just regular driving in sport mode isn't ideal. So if you have the room, you have the space. See, like I felt the shift, that downshift right there. Yeah, this truck is awesome. Again, this isn't the fastest truck out there. This is probably the fastest mid-size truck, like, no doubt. But if you're looking for something faster in the mid-size, it's gonna be hard to find. But yeah, next video, I am going to be installing some graphics on the front grille, just like I had in my Gen 2 Raptor, if you guys have never seen that. And then the video after that, I do need to do an oil change. I'm actually going to be out of town all next week, so I don't want to slow down with the content. I want to keep updating you guys, keep giving you real world feedback, the things that I'm learning, the things that I'm experiencing. So I got to figure out what I'm going to do next week from a video perspective, but keep a lookout for that. Again, I can't thank you guys enough for watching this content. I hope you guys like it. If you guys have any feedback, any questions, anything, please leave a note in the comments. I would love to make a video about it. And that's it for now. Peace. I'll give you guys a little teaser, but the next video after this one, I got something for this Ford emblem, and you guys are gonna have to wait and find out.